Hi, everyone. This is the Option program presented by Experimental Sound Studio. Every Monday, usually at 8 p.m. Central Time, we broadcast performances and interviews with artists during the period of COVID when live concerts are not really possible. These are part of the quarantine concert programming that ESS does almost every single night, if not every night of the week, which is extraordinary. Our guest tonight, or this afternoon, depending on where you are in the world, is Mette Rasmussen, an amazing musician, and I like to say good friend as well. It's really good to see you, Mette.
Hi, likewise. Thanks for the invitation.
Yeah, it's beautiful. So we're broadcasting at around 8 p.m. across Scandinavia and Europe for most of that area, and we'll rebroadcast this at 8 p.m. Central Time, so folks in the States who can't watch now can watch later and catch it. We're going to start off right away with some music and a performance and video of Mette's new stuff. You did this just this weekend?
Yeah, Saturday. Yeah, with a good friend of mine, Juliane Schütz, who's living in Trondheim, video artist and photographer.
Great. And is there anything you want to talk about the piece before we look at it?
No, it's fairly short, fairly jingly introducing.
Okay, well, maybe we'll start using this as the option theme. You'll get royalty checks soon. Okay, we're going to take a look at this, and we're going to come back and talk to Mette Rasmussen. Thanks very much for tuning in, and I'd like to remind everyone that whether you're living in the States or not, things are in an ongoing crisis right now, and what you can do to contribute to causes that are important to you to try to motivate real social change. I'd like to just encourage that, whether it's demonstrating, donating, making phone calls, or sharing information. Supporting each other at this time is more crucial than it ever has been. And just want to put that out there, is that all this is happening, not just this program, but any kind of music, any kind of culture that's taking place is in a broader context that needs a lot of social change. So thanks for anything you can do to help make that happen. This is Mette Rasmussen. We'll be back in it right after this jingle video to talk with her. Thanks for listening. Hey everyone, that was Mette Rasmussen with the new option theme. I'm a huge fan of Julius Hemphill. I was wondering, there was the phrase, the melodic contour of it reminded me a bit of some of his themes. Are you a fan of Hemphill's music at all?
I really like his playing, but I haven't been listening to it for years. Actually, it's many years since I was listening stuff from him. But of course, the repetition stuff that keeps coming, and yeah.
Okay, so I'm not crazy yet. Hey, I wanted to talk a little bit. This past weekend, we were involved with a festival that was broadcast out of Buenos Aires. And you did a piece with Mo, collaboration. I wondered if you could talk a little bit about that collaboration. You got a lot of projects going on, and the piece that was submitted included visuals taking place in a really powerful location. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that and working with Mo, how that took place and how it's developed.
Yeah, I've been working with the Mo. It's a band of Guru Mo on bass and vocals and Håvard Skarset from Oslo. And we've been working together for some years now. Well, I guess a couple of years, but we've just been extremely, we've been doing so much on those 2 years that it feels like forever. We've been touring in Japan and Mexico and Norway, and we have a record out called Tolerancia Picante, and we have a new release coming out on Relative Pitch, which we recorded in Japan with Ikuro Takahashi on drums.
Oh wow!
Which is coming out now in the autumn, and that was the streaming we did. Was it Friday? That was the
Saturday. Yeah.
Saturday. Yeah, that was the first thing I did so far of the streaming.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And Guru and Håvard have been through all this half year of the COVID restrictions. They've been coming from Oslo to Trondheim a few times, and we've been rehearsing in my practice space.
Mm.
And we're working on a new album that we're going to record in the autumn with Jørn Træen. And we're working on new material for that, writing stuff. Like the first album we did was like we went to the studio for 2 days, and it was kind of improvised tunes. And then we would go in and edit on, like put different, we would layer them afterwards with vocals and texts. But it all stemmed from like improvisation, all the material and that. But this album we're working kind of opposite. Like we're writing everything. We're working on new material, and we've been taking a long time writing tunes and writing new stuff and getting ideas. And so we have like a ton of ideas and a lot of material for when we go into the studio, which is soon. I think it's in September in Bergen.
Okay.
Yeah.
Why did you move from like an improvised, like let's say a completely improvised basis, the foundation, and then adding layers and like you said, text and whatnot? What made you decide to shift from that approach to doing something where you have pre-composed elements?
I guess the thing I was kind of adding to the band because that was our first endeavor when we did that record, and that was like the improvisational side, because they had fixed material from before, and like the first time we did a show, I was just like a feature on their material.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. And I think now it's we know each other very well, so we have a totally different like offspring of like wanting to create together in like a room and like composing together. because we all kind of stem also from improvisation, free improvisation. But I think now that we know each other so well, it's a different setting for composing together and bringing in ideas and testing them out. And yeah.
So when you're writing, is it that you all kind of compose the material together, or does someone bring in a completed theme and you learn it and then you play it, or how does that work? Is it like a mutual composition?
And we've done different kind of approaches. Like we've had kind of dogmatic things where we recorded small takes and then we listened back to them afterwards and picked something out of that. Or we have an idea and then we just kind of start to play, and then we play that idea and then we record it. We record a lot and then we listen back to it afterwards, and then we pluck different things out of that we're going to use, and then we start to use it in a more like then we use it in more like a tool in a composition, like the things we draw from what we recorded. And we've also been like some of the last time we sat down and listened different pieces like of classical composers or rock bands, and then right after we heard a piece, we tried to replicate it. But I mean, it would be like we heard Stockhausen electronic music piece, and then we replicate it as the trio we are, and then it sounds completely different.
Yeah.
But so we get this trying to create this kind of extra thing out from something already existing.
Oh, that's really great. That's really fascinating. So it kind of like intuitively, organically colors the thinking of the improvisation by having that reference you just listened to. But then it's sort of guiding it, but then you guys create your own completely personal version of it. That's great. That's super cool. Oh, man. And I wanted to also talk now, if it's cool with you, a little bit about Tashi Dorji and your work with him. Tashi was on the program last Monday. We had a great conversation with him, really interesting and great solo music as well. So I was wondering, can you talk a little bit about working with him? Is it always in a duo kinds of groups that you work with the two of you?
Yeah, I mean, most primarily it's the duo that I have going with Tashi, and we have a record out on Feeding Tube. And but we also did some trio with Tyler Damon.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Okay. And we have a record out on Trost with that trio. But we started as a duo, me and Tashi, like some years back. Like I think it was his first time in Europe, and we had a very small gig at Larry's Corner in Stockholm. And I remember it very well because I had like this infection in my eye and I was really like not seeing very clear. And I think it was the first time Tashi ever played with a saxophone player, if I don't remember wrong. And we never met before, so it was really funny. But it just became like this beginning of an adventure and a new duo and a new music adventure with Tashi. And we played quite a lot after that. He was gonna join me. I had a residency. I was gonna have a residency before the Corona hit in Paris, and he was gonna join me, but then he had to. It didn't happen. So I hope we're gonna be able to make it at another point. Yeah.
I hope so too. I hope that all the things that have kind of been canceled because of COVID, they'll come back and be rescheduled, and it would be great. How long was the residency supposed to be for in Paris?
3 days.
3 days, and then was it like a performance residency kind of thing?
Yeah.
Concerts. Okay, beautiful. Yeah, I'm sorry that got lost. Tashi told me that playing with you, I think he said it was the first time he'd worked with a saxophone player, and talked about it being a real challenge to work with an instrument like that and kind of find his way on the the guitar, like the certain, let's say, frequency, areas, like, pitch wise, like overlapped or things of that nature. And he kind of had to rethink some things. Did you have the same kind of experience working with guitarists or with Tashi? Like, kind of, how did it impact your playing, aside from having the eye infection and everything else? But like, just did you like find yourself jumping into a thing and then saying, "Whoa, I got to readjust here," or did you kind of move forward and just see what was going to happen and push it that way? Was there a lot of adjusting involved?
I remember like Tashi I don't know, he just have a completely different form idea from what I came from, because I think I came more from the jazz, free jazz trajectory, and he came more from rock, like sound wise, and also in form. I mean, I remember sometimes things would just end and I would be like, is that an ending? And then later on I would like, yeah, I mean, things can just end. I mean, it's that thing of being open to different aesthetics and finding your way also when playing has different trajectories and different aesthetics, and not like to learn from that and to go with it instead of I don't know. It gave me a lot form-wise. There was different things in the beginning that I learned a lot from, and that I found really interesting. Yeah. And also it was he plays it's always very loud and explosive. Yeah,
for sure. So the one thing that was nice about it, what he did, is he played some acoustic guitar pieces.
I know.
Which really interesting in comparison to the electric guitar pieces. I mean, definitely him, but such an interesting combination, the two.
Yeah, I listened a lot his acoustic solo records. Actually, it's some of the records that him and Marissa Anderson like. I have those spinning a lot. The solo acoustic stuff they have, but that's I think that's a different angle he comes from a bit when he it's two different things maybe. And it would be interesting. That was what I was thinking to add him on for the Paris thing. So I was really sad because I have two. I'm in two guitar duos. I am playing also with Julian Dupree from Paris, and they're two very different guitarists, and with both their like crazy cool colors and like so strong voices, both of them, and I enjoy both of the duos very much. And my idea was to have them together in a band and write for that.
Wow!
So hopefully, hopefully I will be able to do it later.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. Yeah. Can you talk just for a second about, like, you say they're very different, and they are, but could you articulate a little bit, like when you're playing with Julian, how that difference results in what you do? You talk about form with Tashi, but with Julian, is it also a form-based thing or sound-based? How would you describe it?
Yeah, I remember when we recorded we have a record on Dark Tree Records from Paris, and I remember when we recorded that in the studio, we were talking on different. I mean, we went in and recorded on one day, and that became the album. And like we tried out different approaches that, I mean, that kind of stems a lot from Julian also as a guitarist. Like you have the volume shifts, like suddenly you're in it's very dense and then suddenly it goes into something small, and like there's sudden changes all the time, but it all kind of, it's like he uses the instrument. It's a guitar, but he uses it how do you say, on his like completely differently. It's like he's approaching the guitar from like a new like his own, like I don't hear anybody sounding like Julian. it's like he found his own way on making the guitar sound and playing with different sounds and different approaches, and yeah. And we also we had a tour in Texas, me and Julian, in last year, and we had ensembles. We had this huge ensemble that we brought music to the ensembles, and what we talked about was that we wanted to magnify what we were doing in the duo to a bigger ensemble. And some of the stuff we were talking about was like that thing of entering with something like strong, but strong can also be very dense and small, but you're entering with something that like a statement in a way. But it can be kind of anything, but it doesn't level what the others are entering with. It doesn't level that out. So we had different kind of cue systems for that, which was very interesting. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And we recorded all that. We have that on record also. So let's see what happens. Yeah.
It'd be very interesting to hear like the duo and then that large ensemble almost on this on a similar, same recording, just to compare the way you applied the aesthetic to a larger group of musicians. That sounds great. That sounds great. Well, let's listen to a little bit more of your music. We have another piece queued up. Can you talk about it a little bit?
The solo piece?
Yeah.
No.
And the first one. No, you don't want to talk about it. Okay, good. All right. Hey, I'd like to thank Alex Inglesian, who's working behind the board, making this whole conversation and broadcast possible. Alex works at Experimental Sound Studio, an amazing organization based in Chicago, whose presentation of the quarantine concerts is extraordinary. I encourage people who are listening now and who listen to the broadcast this evening to donate if they can. All the money is going to go to Mette. And as she mentioned, she really hasn't been playing any concerts since the end of February. There was an online performance that took place out of Buenos Aires with TVL and Rudio that happened on Saturday, but otherwise this is like some of the first material that's been presented. Is that correct, Mette?
Yeah, I mean, also if you don't have any money, just keep watching, and it's good vibes.
Yeah,
so.
We do. Yeah. The
I appreciate it.
Yeah. Super.
Yeah.
Super. Okay, thanks, Alex. Please cue this up, and we'll go forward. Beautiful stuff, Matt. Yeah, it's great to hear you. I miss hearing you. So it's nice to hear and see you again. Is most of your solo work connected to the tours you've done with Godspeed You Black Emperor?
No, I mean, I've toured solo for some years now, and before Godspeed, I mean, I think Godspeed brought something else to my solo playing, because suddenly I was playing in front of an audience of like thousands of people, sometimes 2,000. I mean, sometimes more. And when you're playing solo for that large an audience and you're the warm-up band, then I mean, then you have to get the attention of the audience in a totally different way, yeah, so it definitely brought something else to the playing, like something more explosive, and trying to get the attention of 1,000 people or more. It's you're really on all the time. It's a totally different thing than playing for an audience, like more of a jazz audience that are there and they know what they're listening to, and they have maybe a lot of references, and they listen in a different way, maybe.
Did the playing in the Godspeed context, you're playing solo in, let's say, more standard situations connected to like improvised music audiences, or are they sort of a separate kind of character for you?
I think there's been kind of a trajectory going on for a while of like more rock influenced stuff, like for example with Mo, also, and with Godspeed, and also just playing with Julian and Tashi. So there's definitely been some kind of like I've developed more in that area, or I've been playing more of that stuff for a while now, like that, where things are just it's a different way of playing, I would say. Or I mean, everything is basically the same when the day is over, but I think that being on stage and being in front of amps and being in front of like relying on the sound that comes from the sound guy instead of actually being in the room playing with the acoustics of the room, which I love to do. That are two completely different things. Yeah.
Do you I'm just thinking about what you're talking about, relying on the sound person. You know, that's always a tricky thing, speaking personally, because you're kind of, unless you know the sound person really well and that you trust them to present yourself in the room with the other instruments really well, it can be, speaking personally, it can be frustrating. You know, you suddenly have like a lot of reverb on your horn when you didn't expect it to be there and stuff like that. That can be a little tricky. What can you talk a little bit about you said the music, your solo music, and maybe you meant also the wider range of aesthetics you're working with as a player, have been kind of moving in a trajectory that has been more impacted by the volume and certain kinds of energy and aesthetics of rock music. Can you talk a little bit about that attraction, or why you might be going in that direction? If it's an organic development, or like, oh, this is a new kind of excitement for your own playing.
Yeah, I think some years back there was a fascination of like playing loud, maybe, or like sound, that physical thing of being in a room, and sometimes sounds you make, you can feel them physically in the ears, or the vibrations of really low frequencies, like if you're standing in front of a lot of amps on stage and the sound is kind of coming towards you. And I mean, there's something very interesting about that, like how we see the human body in sound, which is different when like when it becomes physical, and when sound becomes physical, or like because playing solo, let's say you play, sometimes it's very energetic and you keep going for a long time, so it becomes, at some point it just you hit this kind of limiter where it becomes almost only physical. And yeah, I think that's an experience. How do you say? Yeah, it's an interesting I don't know what to call it. It's very different from when you are in a room where the room kind of carries the sound, and when and when it's it's two different kind of I don't know what to draw from it really.
The physicality of volume and the impact on, like, as you say, the vibrations, the overtones, the physical feeling of playing in that context, and the impact of the music on yourself on stage. That's something that kind of puts your music in a different on a different wavelength, really, actually, and that's part of what's exciting about it. Just that physical impact aspect.
For sure, I had the feeling of like after some of the Godspeed shows, like that feeling of being able to fill that larger room, relying on PA, and relying on a sound guy or a sound woman, and to feel you get this room, you get an ambient feeling after all, but it's all based on a PA. And that became really interesting, because as a saxophone player, we don't get to experience that the same way as guitar players do, because they have their amps or they go out through the PA, and it's that was an interesting feeling as a saxophone player, to get to fill that larger room just like by being a saxophone player.
Yeah.
So it becomes, the sound, the idea of sound, the sound you create as a musician becomes, it kind of magnifies itself, I guess. And then when you're playing with others, and it is a lot of sound, then the interesting part becomes also shaping that. So it's not just noise, but it, becomes, which is different than,
it's different than playing acoustically, in a total acoustic environment, where in a way, as much as you can, you have control over what you're making. You understand pretty quickly what the acoustics of the room are like, how they're going to affect what you do, what overtones are possible or not, depending on how reverberant the room is. It's like you're in control, so to speak, whereas you're handing a certain level of control over to the sound person and the PA, and kind of trusting that they're going to give you back, let's say, a consistent, like they're creating a sound in the room that needs to be as consistent as the room itself. Otherwise, you can't figure out how to gauge what you're doing. There's a lot of importance in that role. Like, a great sound person is amazing, because they can keep the thing from becoming noise, even at a high volume, And so if you're working with someone really good, things that normally might even be inaudible on the horn suddenly can speak in a way that they couldn't before, which is really cool. It's super exciting. Listening to this solo piece that we just heard, and having had the opportunity to get to work with you sometimes, which has always been amazing, you're definitely really pushing what the horn can do, exploring overtones, registers, moving through registers pretty extremely. Definitely for me personally, Ayler has been a real inspiration in that area, and opening that field of activity up on the saxophone on a level that definitely got, indicated by work with, let's say, even going back to Lester Young, but certainly coming up through things that John Coltrane and Pharoah Sanders did. Ayler took for the tenor, pushed that in a whole nother way. It was his birthday a couple of weeks ago. I was wondering, is Ayler an influence for you, or are you getting to those sources in a different way?
Yeah, I did listen a lot of Ayler, but that's also I don't listen Albert that much anymore. But he was an influence for a while, like the whole wave and the overtones and coming from it from that angle, and but I don't know. There's this thing. I found myself listening to a lot of tenor players but I was, yeah, but I think there is this thing that it's these things are different on the alto. I mean, it has a different way of projecting, simply. So I think that's different. I mean, there's definitely different frequencies that has a different there's a different way about the two things. I mean, even though a saxophone is a saxophone, that's coming from a alto way. I don't know. I mean, it also. I mean, what we were talking about before with the whole like being in a room. I think after playing a lot of shows, to play a gig where it's in a room with where it's acoustic and it's a good ambient room, and then it just becomes mind blowing suddenly that like the smallest things you do are audible, and the whole thing with the overtones becomes completely different. Also, if you're acoustically in a good room, you start to hear all these other frequencies, layers of frequencies. But yeah, a lot of that stems from Albert Ayler. Yeah, I visited his grave last time. That was the time before that in the U.S. actually. Yeah, with
presenter in England, Matt Lafferty, who's trying to make Albert Ayler's birthday. He's talking about trying to make that a city holiday to celebrate, like Albert Ayler Day, which I think would be amazing. I really hope people do that. Incredible.
Actually, the Danish guy made a movie about him, but it was never released. Or maybe he was Swedish. I remember seeing it many years ago. I always wondered why that wasn't released, because it was actually really good.
Yeah, it came out, and the part of what's in that film that I wish somehow would come to light is an entire concert from France that was filmed and recorded. There's a segment that's used in that film you're talking about. There's a whole set of music by that band, and if that could come out, I'm sorry.
Where did you see the movie?
Many years ago, I saw the film. I can't even remember now, like the context of seeing it. But yeah, I did see the film, and there is this amazing segment because there's so little. I mean, there's recordings of Ayler, but actual footage of Ayler playing. Like there was something recorded for the BBC, and the head producer hated the music so much that they erased the track. They kept my understanding was the visual part was kept, but just out of spite, they erased the music. So there's like these things, and then there's a film, Michael Snow's New York Eye and Ear Control. The film has Ayler in it. There's like little kind of abstracted moments, I think, of the band playing in that, and you see Ayler, his presence and walking around and whatnot. But actual concert footage, the only thing that I'm aware of is this that's whole and in its entirety is this thing from France, and that's never, as far as I know, been released completely. Which is a shame, because to actually see him playing, I mean, there's so much more information to get from watching a person and hearing them. It's incredible.
Yeah. I always wondered about that, hearing him play, how that would have felt, because I think he was very strong live in volume. So, and not that you have to be, but I think he must have. And yeah, it's a shame that movie never was released. It's really a shame.
Yeah, hopefully talking about it will kind of kick some ideas around and get the thing maybe put out into the public again somehow, because like seeing that has so much impact. And I agree, like to get with a tenor, I mean, to get what he does in the overtones, you've got to push it a certain way, and there is volume involved in there. I mean, you can't get some of the horn to speak in certain ways without a lot of volume behind it. And that, volume doesn't equate with something being powerful. But in Ayler's case, there was like these gestures, these musical gestures, the overtones. There's a lot of power there in that music, physically, but also, let's say emotionally, intellectually, a lot of things going on. Speaking of like earlier generations and archetypal musicians, there was a question that came in the chat while we were listening to your last solo piece. Did you play with Alan Silva?
Yeah, I did.
Could you talk about that? I did not know that. Could you talk about that for a minute before we hear the next solo piece?
Yeah, me and Ståle Levek Solberg, we had a trio with Alan, and we have a record out on a Polish label, and yeah, we did actually a quartet at Kongsberg once, also with Marshall Allen, Ståle, and me.
Wow.
Which I think is somewhere around on YouTube, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
that was the size of the bass.
He plays synthesizer more now.
Yeah.
He still plays the bass sometimes, but I mean mainly he's doing synthesizer. Yeah. No, he's actually I hadn't spoken with Alan for a long time, and then I think it's like 3 or 4 weeks ago he suddenly called me out of the blue on FaceTime. Yeah, and we had a really lovely conversation about life and the current situations, and yeah. So he's keeping strong, and he's with his wife. They're living in France now. Yeah, and he's still playing. Yeah.
How was it like? What was it like working with him in the trio?
Oh, it was. It feels like Alan plays the way he talks. I mean, there's a lot of layers of history and a lot of layers of thoughts and dialogue and reflections, and it was a lot of stuff was happening, and also when we were touring, I mean, he had so much stuff to just tell of history, and like he was so interested in dialogue, and yeah, it was pretty mind-blowing to be working with Alan.
Wow.
Yeah,
that's great. Well, let's listen a little bit to your own music. We have another piece. This is another performance type piece. Yeah, coming up.
Yep.
Okay, let's listen to that, and we'll come back. We're talking and listening to Mette Rasmussen. This is the Option program that is presented by Experimental Sound Studio every Monday. Usually goes live at 8 p.m. Central Time, but we're doing this at 1 p.m. Central Time, 8 p.m. in Scandinavia and Europe to get Mette to the people in that part of the world, because she's in Trondheim, Norway right now. Please donate if you can. Keep listening if you can. All the funds collected will go to Mette, as they always do on the quarantine concerts that ESS does. Thanks to ESS, thanks to Alex and Gleason helping on all those concerts, including this one. This is Mette Rasmussen, and stay tuned. And for those of you who may have just been tuning in, that was Mette Rasmussen, some more solo music performed in Trondheim, Norway, just over this weekend. I've been asking Mette a bunch of questions, and there's a few coming in from the listeners, so we're going to turn over to those. But before we do, I want to get one more in, if that's cool. You talked earlier, Mette, about actually this past weekend and today being the first online concerts you've done during this COVID period, the first performances that have kind of gone out. This week coming up, you're actually going to be doing a concert with Ingebrigt, you said. And could you talk a little bit about what you've been doing? And obviously you've been practicing, you sound great. And I have to say in that last piece, one thing I really love in your playing is the incorporation of the voice, the vocal. I'm glad you did a piece with that too. It was made me happy. Yeah, what have you been focusing on? I mean, 4 months is a long time. You're one of the busiest musicians I know, touring wise, and I mean it's incredible. And obviously, touring hasn't been possible right now. So, a person like yourself, what's been the focus? What's been helping you get through this period?
Yeah, it's been the longest time for like many years that I haven't. I think it's been for many people that like you haven't played a show or just to be at home for that long is very uncommon. Like usually, I mean, as we're in and out of home and in and out of suitcases all the time, and you get used to like life is kind of lived on the road. So I think, I mean, at first it was a bit strange. I mean, first you have to kind of grasp the whole situation a bit. But then slowly you realize that, okay, this is actually gonna, I mean, still it's like we don't know when we're actually going to be able to tour and work the way we used to do. Maybe there was a time before COVID and a time after. It's still not completely sure, I guess. But I mean, I've been trying to, I mean, using the time to actually figure out, reflecting on the stuff that I do and my practice and my music, and also just have time at home and kind of land into that, into your roots in a way. And yeah, also been reflecting about like, I mean, who you are in your head, or like like, I think many times we want to change something as musicians. Like often the question I get the most often is like that. So, you know, what do you want with your music, you know, and are you changing stuff? And I think the most common answer is that most people would like to maybe achieve some kind of change. But I mean, I've been reflecting about a lot about that, and like, is it actually possible to change stuff with music, or do we have to be active in another way? And so I've tried to focus put my focus a bit more local. Like, I have a practice space here in Trondheim called Stilveg 1, which is also a tiny venue. Like, we have the second floor is like a dark room where we have concerts now and then. But now I've tried to gather a program for the autumn there, and I've been I'm trying to work on that to make work for local people here, and have talks and workshops there, and so that's one thing I've been focusing on, and so more locally, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think what you're talking about, I kind of see that happening too. That kind of being basically forced to be in a community, in a location, especially for people like us who spend so much time on the road and so little time in one place, which we may which we call home, or where we have an apartment, or wherever we live. And I think there could be something really positive about that approach to a community-based, locally based set of activities, whether it's organizing concerts, doing food drives here, like in our neighborhood. A lot of people are out of work still, and like things are very difficult. It's like all these things happening right in your community. I think that kind of activity is a real social activism. It's legitimate, and I think that'll help people kind of engage with their community in a way that I know I wasn't, because I wasn't here most of the time. I mean, not using that as an excuse, but just as a reality. But being here and starting to think, like, what is my community? And my community is international. Like, you're part of my community. You know what I mean? Even though it's not where I'm living in Chicago, but like, I think about that, like, my history over the last 2 decades incorporates lots of friends, certainly outside of the U.S. and Chicago. So how do I work with them? How do I engage with that part of my world, which is my community? Like, I'm really, speaking very personally, like, very, very, I'm really struggling with the fact that I'm not, like, this is the only way I can see someone like you, right?
Yeah.
It's hard for me. I mean, there are bigger problems in the world, but speaking very selfishly, this is a problem for me. It's hard. So like, I miss my community, and I think about that too. I think there's lots of levels to what local means, and I think anything that someone can do to support each other, whether it's at home or like even like talking like this, presenting ideas like this, the listening community out there, like, speaking, like, I'm part of that community. I'm part of the listening community. Like, seeing the festival that took place out of Buenos Aires on Saturday was super inspiring for me. Hearing you with Mo was like incredible. It like made me feel engaged in the world, and like that's a way to contribute too. So
yeah,
I'm really, really excited that you're doing this, and I hope it goes really well.
And I think that's also what it's. I mean, it was the first time I was doing a stream, but it was so because I watched the whole stream, and suddenly you get to see all these people. Like, it's kind of a local community, and you get to see all these amazing people play, and which before you would have had to travel to somewhere to see that, and suddenly you get this gift just streaming in through your window, and it's. That was really inspiring that night. Yeah, that was really inspiring to see the acts.
Yeah, I felt the same. And one thing that's really powerful about these quarantine concerts and like that festival and other things that are using this Twitch platform is that it has a kind of engagement through the chat group where people are talking to each other, listening to the music, and it's totally different than a regular concert, and it doesn't replace the feeling I have about playing a regular concert to an audience in a room, but it's an amazing alternative, and it creates some of the social engagement which I connect so thoroughly with music and why it's so important to me. So having these opportunities, speaking personally, has been really important, and getting the chance like this for me to hear you, to talk to you, to get some of your ideas, to kind of meet across this huge ocean just in this moment. I got to thank you very much. It's a huge gift for your city. It's really a gift. Really a gift.
Thank you.
And thank you. I want to turn it over to these questions that kind of related. One from J Montes 807 and one from my good friend C.S. Federico Peñalva, who is from Buenos Aires and was watching that festival on Saturday. Their questions are sort of related. J Montes is asked, was there a gateway experience or recording that got you into jazz and improvised music? And Feda asks, how was your experience moving towards becoming a full-time musician? How did that happen? How were your first steps? So it's like kind of how did you get, what was the breakthrough that started you, and how did you get from that moment moving forward towards where you are now?
Yeah. I mean, I grew up on the countryside of Denmark. So I can't actually say that that it stems from something. I don't know. It's like I went to the library and looked on the jazz, and I pulled out the Expectations of Keith Jarrett with like Dewey Redman and Paul Motian and yeah, and then I would sit, making my homework with my ear things on in the evening and listen to that. And I think just picking stuff on the library in the beginning was a big thing for me.
Wow.
And yeah, and then I think getting older, and I just live concerts, going to live concerts and experiencing music.
How did you do that in Denmark? You said you grew up in the countryside.
Yeah.
For some pretty special reason, you decided to go to the jazz collection at your library, which is also already pretty unusual for someone growing up, wherever they live, countryside of Denmark or not. How did you end up seeing live shows? Where do those take place?
I remember I had my sister's boyfriend drive me to one at one point, and my dad didn't want me to go. That was like when I was younger, yeah. But yeah, and I mean, that was in Denmark. There's a lot of small jazz clubs. So, and I mean, Denmark has a long tradition in jazz. So, it was fairly easy to also go to a jazz club. And later on, when I moved to Aarhus to study in Denmark, there was a lot of people doing shows there. Some of the people that later became Jazz House in Copenhagen did shows back then and booked a lot of Norwegian bands like Moha and The Thing. And so I was exposed to a lot of music live, I would say, has always been the kicker.
Yeah, live is the kicker. And how did you going from that initial inspiration, getting into the music, how did you move being a musician full time? Like, what were the steps? Did you go to conservatory? Did you just work on your own and start playing with people? How do you?
Yeah, I went to conservatory. So that was that was kind of my way. That was kind of my way. Mm-hmm. But I mean, after conservatory, I ended up in Norway after studying half a year in Norway. I ended up there, and I really didn't know that many people and didn't really have a circle back then when I lived here. So I think at some point after school, I just thought, okay, I need to start, just start touring, or like I need to get out. And by that time, I had more projects that were outside of Norway. So I think touring became more globally. From the beginning, it was more globally or international than national. So I kind of did it in reverse, I would say. Like I got very busy international before really becoming busy national, I would say. Yeah.
And how did you meet these people outside of Norway? Like, how did you make those connections to develop these projects?
Well, I guess. Well, I mean, I guess it's different from project to project, but I mean, I worked a lot with Chris Corsano through the years. I think since 2014, and originally that was gonna be us just playing, you know, an improv, like just meeting up and playing. But then somehow, because I had just been in Amsterdam, John Dijkman said, you should call my friend Michael Foster. And then Michael Foster set up a gig at Jack's in Brooklyn, where, I mean, that was the day I met Chris. We met and we did an hour playing that was recorded, and then we did the show in the evening. And at the show, Kevin Riley was there from Relative Pitch. And he immediately was like, oh, I would like to release this. And so he got the recordings we did in the day, and that became the first record we did. Yeah.
But how did you meet Chris? Like, how did you know, like, to reach out to him and things like that?
We met in Oslo, and we were doing the same bill. I was playing with Rudi Mahal and Kasper, Tom, and Ola Høyer. We were doing a quartet gig. Yeah. And we were doing a solo gig. Yeah.
And you heard Chris and you kind of hit it off. You said, oh, he's someone I want to work with, something like that?
No, I mean, I heard his playing, and I was just like, I had heard him before, years before, at Nya Perspektiv in Västerås in Sweden, where he was playing with Akira Sakata.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Great group.
And so I just thought, okay, I really had a feeling that was something I wanted to investigate, you know, because I was also working at that time. I was working both on like the saxophone as an instrument, but also the saxophone as like with more preparations and stuff, which I mean, he's such a master in that. Yeah. Yeah. So I was immediately drawn to his playing, and yeah.
And that kind of a process was similar with the other collaborations. Like you'd hear somebody, encounter their music, and it would resonate with you, like in terms of like, okay, I have a connection to what they're working on, so I want to pursue it. I want to get in touch with them, meet them, try to put some concerts together. Kind of organic.
Yeah, no, I don't think I was ever like that. I mean, I was that in a few cases, I guess, but no, I wasn't that good at reaching out. I think not as much. I think things just kind of happened like by itself. When things just kind of get rolling, I wasn't. You know, you have kind of an intuition on where to go and what to follow, and I think in music you always feel what resonates with you more than other things, music wise and playing wise and social wise, and yeah. Also, I had a group which I studied at Trio Riot. We're not a group anymore, but we were a group for some years, which was with David Meyer and Sam Andre. We studied together, and we had like 2 or 3 years where we did like several tours in UK a year. Like we would borrow Sam's mom's car, and then we did like 2 or 3 tours in UK every year, just going around in the car. And I mean, by then you start to meet a lot of people also, and maybe you start to get invited to things as well, and yeah. So
touring has like been really a key principle, like not just from the practical standpoint of, okay, you know, you pay your rent by doing those concerts, but a creative one, like encountering new people, testing out your work, like you said, like playing with Godspeed You Black Emperor, suddenly being in front of 2,000 people. How do I do a solo music that's going to engage that audience who's not there to see me? They're there to see Godspeed. You know what I mean? Initially, anyway. I think to be honest, the solo shows, like, a lot of people have talked about them. They obviously have a lot of impact. But like you're walking out, and a lot of people don't know who you are, and you're like that pushes you creatively, pushes you into other areas. Working with the PA, like you said, compared to acoustic stuff. So touring, aside from just the practical aspect of what it means to go on the road and do concerts, it's also, it sounds to me, like it's an aesthetic pursuit too. It develops your music. It develops who you hear, what filters back into your ideas. So it's a pretty key methodology, not just something that's practical. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, touring becomes how you develop also, and it becomes. I used to say that it becomes like flesh and blood in a way, like the music becomes the same as flesh and blood. But I don't know if I use that vision anymore. I mean, creatively, things happen with the people you're around and touring wise, and you develop. I mean, you have to develop on the spot in a way, which sometimes leaves very little time for reflection, which I think actually this time here with being at home has been overdue somehow to have some time to reflect. And to revisit some of your old what do you say? Revisit some of your old why you do things and what you think you're doing. And I mean, just to kind of see if it's still holding, or like where to go from here, or
getting a balance between the activity and reflection on the activity is very hard. That's always been my one of my main challenges is like finding a balance, because doing the work is exciting. A lot is happening. It's where the work develops is on the road. There also needs to be time to consider what that is, how it's changing, if the changes are what you want or not, and like you say, this period has kind of been a forced engagement with reflecting, on a lot of levels, and I think trying to look at the positives here, speaking personally too, like having a chance to think about what took place in 2019, what I want to gain from that. I mean, it's kind of been a forced situation, but speaking personally, maybe it's something I need right now, to try to look at the work at this point and think about what I want to do next and how to pursue it. Because I do have time to reflect in a way I normally don't, when I'm running around like you do. I want to thank you, Mette, so much. I think we're kind of winding out our time, and we have one more visual piece. It's been great to talk to you. I cannot wait until we can get back together, play some more, hang out a bit, eat some food, and talk. This piece is a freestyle, and is it also Julian Schutz doing the work, or is it a different filmmaker, video maker?
No, it's still Juliana, but she's been more experimental. I gave her free hands to experiment, so it's a bit more experimental, this last piece. Okay.
I have to say the other footage is super fantastic, and one thing I've noticed over the last months of these online concerts, the visual aspect of it has skyrocketed.
Yeah,
and that's made the online experience a lot better for me personally. Like initially, as great as the concerts were, and as important it was that music was still happening in the shutdown, it's difficult to look at a computer screen, certainly for a number of hours. And as the visuals become stronger and more engaging, it really helps with the music too, to pay attention, to be part of it.
And it becomes, suddenly you start to notice light as colors and just you start to reflect about the whole aspect of listening. What is listening actually? I mean, do you listen with more than just your ears, you know?
Exactly.
Actually. Yeah.
Exactly.
So yeah, I think that's been cool to inspiring to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. And please thank Juliana for the work, because there's a real collaboration there, and those contributions are fantastic. So looking forward to this last piece. Again, thanks to Mette Rasmussen. Thanks for the music and the energy and the time. Big thanks to Criminal Sound Studio for letting the option program continue during this period, and for all the work they're doing, the quarantine concerts, everything else they're doing. It's been great to talk to you, Mette. I miss you very much and look forward to the next time we can be together.
Likewise. Thank you, Ken.
Thanks for listening, everybody. Please stay tuned for this last freestyled experimental visual piece, the music by Mette Rasmussen. This show will be rebroadcast at 8 p.m. Central Time tonight. Thanks for listening. And please donate if you can. All the funds will be going to Mette.